Welcome to the Aroma Paths Podcast. We are your scentcasters, Jennifer Pressimone and Sharon Falsetto Chapman, bringing over 40 years of combined experience. Aromatics are our passion, and we'll be sharing holistic tips, herbal remedies, and essential oils in a simple way to make your health journey easier. Let's start our walk together.
Aroma Paths stepping fresh through the mist. Essential oils lifting vibes, feel the twist.
We are excited to be sharing this episode of Aroma Paths Podcast with you. We are going to be talking about aromatics and herbs for anxiety and depression. Such a hot topic, and emotions and mental and emotional stress that plague so many. There are millions of people, whether it's situational, whether it's just sometimes, or it's chronic. For some people, it's debilitating to have chronic anxiety, just this heightened state of just feeling panicked and overwhelmed. And when you have anxiety, certainly your nervous system is on high alert. It's like you're in fight or flight all the time. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have depression. And we think of anxiety as just like really, really high strung. And then depression, it's more of a lull. It's very deficient. And so you have these polar opposites, and sometimes they meet in the middle, and you have anxiety with depression. And sometimes you have depression with a little bit of anxiety. Sharon and I felt that it was really an important topic that we wanted to share our perspective. We wanted to share our experience, and we also wanted to share aromatherapy, essential oil remedies, herbs, herbal tinctures, herbal teas that you can use to bring you relief wherever you are on the spectrum, whether it's short term, situational, or it's long term. And we'll talk about some culprits of why does this keep happening, and maybe plant some seeds with you and inspire you and give you some tactical, holistic health tips to be able to help yourself. The biggest thing you could do and the biggest blessing Sharon and I can give you is empowerment to know how to help yourself. And when you know how to help yourself, you're going to be able to help your family, your friends, everybody else that are around you, and everybody else that you serve. If you have a practice, if you have a business, we want you to be able to use holistic health and really feel comfortable using that. So we're going to dive into all the good, the bad, the ugly about anxiety and depression. Yeah. But first, I want to welcome my fellow scent caster, Sharon Falsetto Chapman. How are you?
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing
You're doing
great.
good. This is another kind of personal podcast for me as well, because I've had my own battles with depression and anxiety pretty much since my late 20s, just to share some details. I think I was always a shy kid, and I think that comes with the territory as well, like anxious just from being that. But I really got more anxious, I think, in my late 20s after college, my first job. It was very stressful. And I think that's when things kind of get into anxiety with you. And then shortly after that, in my early 30s, my husband died very suddenly, and that sent me into depression and anxiety. And that's been a kind of ongoing journey. Also grief in that, which we're going to talk about in our next podcast, so I won't touch on that there. Then I think it just builds once you've got anxiety. I don't know, I feel like it builds on previous experiences you've had, that experience, and then you get anxious because you had that experience, and so it builds more on that. And my latest brush with it was, as I talked about in our last episode, an abusive situation I was in. It still gives me PTSD with that post-traumatic stress disorder, which is linked to it. I guess we could do another podcast on that kind of condition. So I've had my own journey with that, and it's actually probably the reason I got into aromatherapy in the first place, roundabout when my husband died. I was looking for something to help with that, because you go to the doctor and they give you antidepressants and stuff, but I was looking for something more natural as well to go with that. And scent was just, there was something I connected with on that level at scent. It was just so calming, and it's there when you need it.
That I'm like, I wonder when I first had anxiety or depression. I'm thinking back. I think I have had it, as a child. I don't think I knew what it was. So I think that's why I'm having a hard time going back.
Hmm.
But I was a shy kid. I remember I was a high achiever. I loved excelling in school. I loved having a lot of friends, but I did struggle with having good friends. There are actually a couple girls that I knew from elementary school that I'm friends with today. And we've lost touch during the times, but we've reconnected thanks to social media. We've talked about this of, wow, we really weren't the popular kids. We were picked on, or we were used, because I know for
Yeah.
me, when hormones kicked in, I really do think that there's a huge connection with hormones when puberty starts, right before puberty starts, through puberty, all the way through being in your 20s, but then getting into going through all of those phases between your 30s and 40s, and then up and until you get to
Mhm.
menopause. Hormones play a huge role. It's part of our biochemistry, it's part of our fluid system. That's how they communicate. And it's just like with water, you think of high tides and low tides. When they get off, when the fluids get off, the fluid
Yeah.
system gets off. That's why we're so sensitive to astrology and the planetary positions. I want you to note, does anxiety get worse? Does depression get worse? Does it get heightened during those times? Because that's a culprit. And thinking of myself going through the teenage years and into the 20s, I did have anxiety and depression. And when I had my huge bouts, when I battled Crohn's and colitis, I didn't realize
Right.
I had anxiety and depression until somebody brought it to my attention. And so gut health is another main contributor to that. And just listening to your story, Sharon, we have hormones going on, and then to lose your spouse at such a young age, it really does set that
Yeah.
foundation. And it's a compound, like you said, it's a compound effect.
That's right. That's the word I was trying to think of. Compound. That's what building on top of things. Yeah. So with that experience, I went and had a massage actually with the essential oils with aromatherapy, a massage therapist who is skilled in, she knew aromatherapy. And that was my first introduction to aromatherapy. And it was just so calming and so peaceful. And I thought, this is the kind of sense of calm and peace I need, that when something is not going right. And it's not, I was having massage, but not everybody can have a massage all the time. So I was looking at other ways to learn it. And I thought, I need to learn about this. How can I use this at home, like in the bath and in lotions and stuff like that? So that's when I enrolled in my first aromatherapy certification course back in the UK. And yeah, I was hooked. Here I am, like 20 plus years later, still learning about it. And yeah, I still have anxiety and depression, and I have tools that help me with that. I did move to Arizona, and I don't know if you can see here, I'm on the wrong side because of my reflection. This is juniper that I've got here. And juniper grows a lot in Arizona. It grows around my property. I did not know a lot about juniper berry, but you also use the leaves and the twigs. And I did not know about a lot about juniper till I moved here. And I've actually distilled juniper. It's a good one for anxiety and just supporting you as well, the tree that's around the property. So I got introduced to juniper for using for anxiety, but some of the others that I'm most familiar with, and you're probably going to say the same, Jennifer, is the citrus oils. They're really great for anxiety and depression. Bergamot in particular is really good for depression, but you can combine these with some of the tree oils and the flowers as well. But with depression, you kind of want to uplift more than calm your system down. In depression, you kind of get into a funk and you're like, it's really black and you just you need to be lifted out of it. So I find like the citrus oils are good for that. Some of my favorites, sweet orange. I also like mandarin. I don't know, Jennifer, what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, juniper. I haven't done a ton with juniper, but I have been, since we've really been doing a lot of work together this past year, I've really
Mhm.
dove into juniper. And I have one of my students who absolutely loves juniper. And so I really have been exploring a lot with that, thinking about, we talked about hormones and fluid movement, looking at the ebb and flow, the tides, and the planetary connections with the fluids, hormones being a part of the fluid system. Juniper is an amazing fluid mover oil, what I call a fluid mover. So it moves the fluid to balance it out. So I could totally see how juniper is going to do that. And juniper is also going to be more adaptogenic to help balance those. I think talking about the citrus are great. And I think how they're going to vary is with anxiety, you're spastic, so you want to do antispasmodic oils. And two of my favorite, well, I actually have three anti that I love: Roman chamomile, which is one of the very first oil I ever smelled. I love Roman chamomile, strong antispasmodic, as is clary sage and sweet marjoram. And so for anxiety, we want to calm that down. And then adding in a little bit of citrus to that can be helpful. And I too love the bergamot for anxiety. I think it's amazing. And I do like the sweet orange for that. And the orange is going to be really particular for adrenal support and glandular support, hormones being a part of the glandular system. And then for depression, it's we're more on the lower scale. We deficient, and depression is often correlated with a deficient liver functions. And you think of, what does the liver do? Well, the
Mm.
liver helps with hormone production, but on top of that, it's elimination. It helps us break down
Yeah,
toxins, even toxic thoughts, toxic emotions, toxic feelings, to flush them out. And when they consume you and
right.
overtake your body, then it suppresses you. And so then I want to add in a lot more citrus. So where I will add in citrus for anxiety, it's not as much as I would add in for depression, because depression, we want to lift up. We want a little bit of trees to ground and root us so we can be
Mhm.
uplifted, but then bringing in more camphors for, I like to do like eucalyptus whenever you feel overwhelmed. I love the red mandarin
Right.
for the adrenal support. And then bringing in some scents, because it gives you roots, but it gives you breath. Because like you said, it's you're sometimes depression, you just get in this really dark place. And then the other citrus that I love is lemon, because lemon's like a flashlight to help you find your way out of the darkness. And so when I'm putting oils together for the different, you want to look at what spectrum you are. And if you have both, then you blend for that middle part.
Yeah, while you were talking there and you were talking about eliminating stuff from the body, I thought of grapefruit as being another one. It's not, I don't use it as often as I should, but I think that would be a great one. I also thought of lemon, like you said, with that, and the grounding with frankincense. And interesting with frankincense, it's been used as an incense for centuries in churches. So it's really a good one, I think, to focus and ground, because that's what people have been using it for. And it also helps slow you down if you're really kind of anxious and all these thoughts racing around in your head. I like to combine frankincense with the citrus oils. Also, I was thinking, I'm just looking at my notes here, Melissa as another one. It's kind of got lemon notes, but it's a little bit different. It can be too overwhelming. I really don't like too much of Melissa essential oil because I do find it a little bit off-putting. I do like it as a hydrosol. So that's another option. If you're not really, you could use hydrosols to spray around, which are lighter, kind of can uplift you. Finding maybe that the essential oils are a little bit too much to start with, you can use the hydrosols, which are, I think, a nice lighter option. I do in my blend that I'm going to share. I also have ylang ylang, which is unusual for me because I don't use ylang ylang in a lot. Again, I find it a little bit too much overpowering, but I think for anxiety and depression combined with sweet orange. I find that works really well for me. And it's a very simple blend, but I've done it for a number of people and they were like, oh, wow, yeah. This is just what I need. It kind of uplifts you at the same time as trying to as calm you down as well. So some of those flowers as well are sometimes nice. But I do like the tree oils for grounding. Pine is another one, especially if you're like really kind of depressed and exhausted. Pine is probably a good one to try and stimulate things. And what I like about the tree oils, I don't know if it's because we're recording this in the fall that it's making me think of tree oils more, but it kind of is a good one, grounding and getting out there and making you think of the outside. Like when you're depressed, it's good to go for exercise as well. Get outside in the fresh air. And trees are all around us. I guess that's why I was thinking of that.
Thinking about frankincense, frankincense is wonderful for the lymphatic system to create movement, but it's also one of my number one oils for fear. And what I find is when there's a lot of anxiety, there's fear of moving forward. And with depression, there's fear of letting go of the past. That's not scientifically proven, but that is a pattern of behavior that I've noticed. And so usually people will have more joint pain in the front of the body versus in the back of the body. With anxiety, depression is more about the past. So I agree with frankincense. And what's beautiful is putting frankincense and ylang ylang together, because ylang ylang, I just did a class the other day at the botanical gardens, and we took a walk through the gardens and we got to see the Kanaga odorata tree, which was really good. It's beautiful because it's not a thick trunk, it's a very thin trunk, but it's very beautiful and it's elegant. And that is really the personality that shines through to help you tap into your inner beauty. It helps you tap into self love, to love yourself. Because when you're having these emotional imbalances and mental thoughts, ruminating thoughts, keeping you from being your best self, then we're disconnected from ourselves. And so I love frankincense for connection to self. And then I love ylang ylang to come in for self love, self beauty, to recognize your beauty. And that together will totally bring you into a state of calm, a state of being centered and just rooted in yourself. And then if you layer in some citrus oils, and you mentioned the pink grapefruit, another wonderful fluid mover. I use that one when there's usually bitterness attached, when you're stuck and you're just stewing over something. I like to add pink grapefruit, and I like to add in pine for somebody when you're working through a situation and you just feel burned by somebody and it's just creating this angst, creating that anxiety, or it just makes you so mad and you feel defeated. It just brings you down into depression, because we know anxiety has a blood sugar imbalance. It's going to be worse when your blood sugar's off, and depression is going to be worse when you're constipated, or when your liver's not quite as happy, your gallbladder's not breaking down all of the fats. There's a physiological side to that. But bringing in the aromatics will be helpful. And then with the Melissa, the lemon balm that you mentioned, I love the hydrosol, but also as a tea. I love it as an herbal tea. And you got me thinking, it's such a powerful antiviral. There's a lot of studies showing its power. It's a powerhouse with antiviral properties. And that's another connection that I've seen with anxiety. Anxiety usually has a higher viral connection to it. And depression, I see a higher bacterial connection to it when we look at overall health connection.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned tea because I was going to talk a little bit about that as well. But I just want to pick up on what you said about ylang ylang. I have never seen a ylang ylang tree in person because I don't live in the tropics where they grow. So you have them obviously down in Florida. So yeah, I'm excited with going to Florida next year to perhaps see a ylang ylang tree in person. That'll be exciting to see. That's going off track a little bit. I was going to talk a little bit about teas that I have here that you mentioned chamomile, which I think is a good one. I have a little bit of chamomile here. And these are good also with depression and anxiety. Sometimes you can't get to sleep at night. Your mind is racing, or you just can't sleep, or you want to sleep at the wrong time. So chamomile's kind of a good one to have before you go to bed at night to try and help you get to sleep. Also rose for self-love, always rose for tea as well. Mint I like as well. Mint is just one of my favorites as tea. It's because I think it kind of helps stimulate you, especially with depression. It helps uplift you and get you going. Another one we didn't mention was yarrow. I've got yarrow tea here. I find that kind of helps with sleep as well. And it could also go in one of the blends as well. I'm just looking at my notes here to see what else I had. Oh, geranium for balancing, for anything, for either of those in anxiety and depression. I just love geranium. So if I'm unsure, like stick geranium in there because it's going to balance everything out. It's going to balance you out, balance the blend out. And it smells lovely as well. And it's also a little cheaper than rose essential oil, which you can kind of sub it for if you don't have rose essential oil. That would be what I would do. So let's see. We talked about the citrus. We talked about a couple of the florals. There's also the like jasmine, but jasmine's supposed to be another good one for anxiety. Jasmine's a little bit like Melissa to me. I find it can be a little bit too much at times. So I would be careful with that one if you're going to use that one. I think I would probably go with the trees first for grounding.
Yeah, with geranium, I love that one also. It's another fluid mover. It moves fluid. It's also a hormone balancer. So if you find that your
Right.
anxiety and depression is hormone related, it's worse around your menses, it's worse during menopause, it's worse with teenagers going through puberty, then geranium is a great alternative for that. And with yarrow, the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about that one is there's something when you do energy work, but when you're around a lot of people, there's something called transference. Sometimes you pick up on other people's energy. Have you ever been around somebody that is just
Mhm.
so negative and like you've just been around them and now you find yourself like, man, I got sucked in? That's a type of transference. And that's when I love yarrow particularly the best. So if you're in a lot of large crowds, if you're at an event and you're doing great, and then all of a sudden you're like, why am I having heart palpitations? Why am I anxiety? Why are my palms sweating? Why did I just get sad all of a sudden? You want to think about, oh, did I ground myself? Am I grounded in myself? Or did you pick up on somebody else's energy? Maybe people that you're around.
Mhm.
That's where, and we're throwing all of these different remedies out because we want to connect with you where you are. I mean, you cannot say, oh, you have anxiety, use this recipe. It's going to work 100% of the time.
Mhm.
What you want to do, and we're throwing out these tips, what you want to do is figure out where are you? Where are and how did you get here? What is the anxiety? Is it hormone related? Is it because you were around a lot of people? Is it because you're hangry? Is it because your immune system is a little off? And the same thing with depression. So yeah, I love the geranium. It's like you said, it's less expensive than rose. It's also beautiful. And then adding in that yarrow too. The other thing I wanted to say about the peppermint is peppermint I've used for, just like a go-to for a lot of things, almost like lavender. Lavender is good for everything. Well, peppermint we're finding is too. It can lift you out of a depression. It can help elevate you, even if it's just a little bit. And then it puts a smile on your face because if you're smiling, it's hard to be sad. And even with anxiety, it's very good with that. And we see that benefit with post op delirium, post op situations where there's a little bit of heightened anxiety, people coming to, we see that with traumatic brain injuries. We see that with psychological and cognitive deficits of how peppermint can help even with dementias and Alzheimer's of helping that type of related anxiety and depression.
Yeah, I like that you said about transference when you were talking about transference, because that is a big one for me. I absorb everybody else's energy. I guess when I was younger, I didn't realize that's what was happening to me. But yeah, crowds and even conferences, even though I enjoy conferences, I have to give myself a break, go outside, kind of de-stress for 10 minutes or something, just to offload all of that, because there's so much energy in a place. It sometimes can be good energy, but it's still a lot going on to me, because and that's probably why I spend a lot of time alone. I'm going to talk about loneliness in our next podcast, and I want to specify the difference between alone and loneliness. There is a difference between the two, because I need to offload that and then be ready myself to get out there. There's also a lot of oils for anxiety and depression. This is a big one with my students. Like when they pick a situation to do for their case studies, anxiety comes up a lot, depression comes up a lot. And they say, well, how do I know what to choose? Because there's so many different oils. There is a lot of oils, but it's like Jennifer said, you got to meet you where you're at. So sometimes it can take a little bit of tweaking with a blend to get what works for one person might not work for another person. So that was another point I wanted to pick up on. And there was one more. Oh yeah, I had to put my glasses on so I could see what I'd written down. So one that I use a lot, and panic attacks is kind of, maybe it's not something that it's kind of linked to anxiety here, but it could be a different subject. Panic attacks and shock, I like to use neroli for. I find that is a really good one to use. A clary sage is another good one for panic attacks, but for me personally, I connect with neroli when it's shock or something, and just a simple inhalation from the bottle. It doesn't have to be a blend, because as we know, neroli is also expensive. I have expensive taste here. But it is one that really works. So that's another one that I've used in the past that has helped me with shock and panic attacks as well. Panic attacks, I also need to probably something like vetiver, because you need to ground yourself. You have to bring yourself back to the moment, not what's going through your head. You need to get grounded. Harry is good for me for that as well, because he does what they call the pressure therapy with dogs. They come and sit on you, and that brings you back to the present as well. But combination of Harry and essential oils, that's what gets me through panic attacks. Because panic attacks they can hit you out of nowhere. You can just be sitting watching the TV. You don't have to be in a crowd or a situation. They just sneak up on you sometimes. And some people suffer worse than others. So having these tools at hand is really helpful to get you back into the present moment. That's really what you need to be doing. And grounding. This is a word that seems to be popping up a lot in this podcast. But yeah, grounding is what really helps.
We may have to do a whole episode on grounding. I love
Yeah.
all of these flower oils you're putting out. I can totally, we can feel that you are a perfumer. So you're bringing in all of your notes. The couple things with panic attacks is usually there's protein deficiency. So you want to look at am I hangry? Did I have enough
Mm,
protein to balance some things out? I'm not a nutritionist, but I do know from personal experience and working with my clients and seeing case studies with my students that there is a correlation there. So that's just a little side note. But what I love is cinnamon. And I like to use leaf because it's like, here you go. You guys can smell it for those of you on camera. I love to do the leaf because it's not as sharp. The bark can be really heating and it can be very overpowering.
mhm.
I love the leaf because it's more gentle, but the spice, right? Because it's so good for anxiety, but also panic attacks. And then you went with vetiver for the grounding nature. I went with cedarwood atlas because it gives you strength.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to have strength, right? You just need to be rooted in your strength to say, no, I'm going to get this into control. I'm going to get this into alignment. You could use pine if you wanted to tap into your resilience,
Yeah.
frankincense if you needed to be tapped into your connectedness. That's why we're throwing out some keywords, maybe to help you feel the difference between the oils so you know what's right for you. I love the spices and the fruits together for anxiety. So in my blend, I have 6 oils. I'll share my blend for anxiety. Roman chamomile, because it's antispasmodic. It's also a nurturer and caretaker. Sweet marjoram, because it helps you tap into your joyous side and reduce spasming. Clary sage, because you just can't, it just makes you giddy. It's anti-spasmodic, but it makes you giddy just to have a little bit of fun. And you can use clary sage for depression or for anxiety. Cinnamon leaf, because that's spice to really help balance and tap into your inner fire, tap into your inner passion. So it's going to divert that spastic energy into a positive direction. Cedar atlas to ground you, and then sweet orange. But you also could do bergamot. That's a tough one. I struggled there. I did
Mm.
ultimately, I muscle tested. I just grabbed blindly the oil. Should it be bergamot or should it be orange? And it was sweet orange. So that's how it ended up in there. And then I'm going to share, you don't have to do this all the time, but I'm going to share a 3-2-1 blending rule. You would do 3 drops of a top note, which would be your orange. You're going to do 2 drops of a middle note. And my middle notes are going to be Roman chamomile, sweet orange, then your base notes. Now, the next 3, they're more middle notes, but they're more on the middle to base note. And that would be clary sage, cinnamon, and cedarwood. So that means in my formula, I would do 3 drops orange, 2 drops Roman chamomile, 2 drops of sweet marjoram, and then 1 drop each of clary sage, cinnamon, and cedarwood. And I would either put that in a diffuser. I also would put that into a roll on with a carrier oil, an unscented carrier oil like sunflower oil or grapeseed oil, something like that. And then for anxiety, does it happen a certain time every day? Is it every morning? Is it every afternoon? Is it because you didn't eat? Is it before bed? Because if so, you want to use that formula before. So if it happened, I don't know why, 1 o'clock every day. Okay, then at 12 o'clock every day, you're going to be applying it to your pulse points, right here on your neck. You can roll it underneath your nose, breathe it in, run it in your diffuser, because what you want to do is you want to start catching it before it happens. Scent is so powerful that it can actually help you as a preventative and a reactive, but our goal is to catch it so it doesn't escalate up to that level. So that's my blend, Sharon, for anxiety.
Love that you shared the 3-2-1 rule. I've never thought of that before. So that's a really good tip for doing an aromatherapy blend. It kind of fits. I love the oils that you put in there. Now, I'm going the opposite. I'm going to go really, really simple. This is one that I've put in, this is one of the fancy inhalers, not just the blank ones, but I put it in salts in here. This is one that I carry with me. This is a mix of actually Himalayan and Epsom salts in here. So I put that in so that the essential oils absorb in there. You're not putting this on your skin, so that's fine to do that, because this is what they used to do in the old days, the old smelling salts. When somebody fainted, they used to stick the lavender salts underneath the nose and bring them round. That's kind of a throwback to that. But we can got these nice little container that you put it in here, and Harry's come to have a look. He likes this blend. You want to smell, Harry? It's so funny. He really likes his friend. He knows this is the one I carry with me when I get stressed. So maybe he's coming to do his pressure therapy. He thinks I'm getting stressed because I've got the anxiety blend out. Now he wants a treat instead. But let's get to the essential oils. So what I've got in here is really simple, just ylang ylang and a sweet orange. This is a blend that's really worked for me. As for number of drops, I'm trying to remember what I put in. You've got to be careful with the ylang ylang. It can be overpowering. I think it's something like, I think I've got 5 drops of ylang ylang and maybe it's 10 drops sweet orange oil. And that's all I have in there. Now, if you want to amend that, if you want to get fancy and put more oils in, which you really don't need, these two really do work well together. But you could, for depression, certainly you could put bergamot in. I would maybe put a bit of bergamot in there as well. Maybe cut back a little bit on the ylang ylang, and you could put, I'm trying to think, one of the tree oils that would go with it. Probably cedarwood, maybe a little bit of cedarwood with that for grounding in there. Or juniper, or juniper. If you're really starting out, this is just a really, really simple blend, and it is really, really effective. I've been using this one for years with myself, with clients, with students. If I've made a gift for somebody that I made I gifted this to people that were working with people suffering from abuse. And they just said, oh, this is really good. It's like a peaceful, calming blend. And yeah, that's my blend. I've just gone simple this time.
I love it. And it's so nurturing. Again, the self love with the ylang ylang and the adrenal support from the citrus. I think it's, oh, how yummy. I'm already smelling it. It's just so
Yes,
beautiful.
that's why I'm excited to
So
smell the ylang ylang tree.
in the tree, you really have to crush the flowers that
All
grow.
right.
It's a thinner trunk, but then it's more of a thicker, waxier type of flower that
Mm.
comes. And so you just feel its elegance when you're in
Right.
its presence. And it's just like, oh, wow, it allows you just to really just stand tall and be you and all of your beauty. It's a beautiful tree and a beautiful oil.
That's the one thing I've really used it for is anxiety. It's just been in there. And I think because it's quite, I do use neroli, but I don't find neroli as presence is as strong as ylang ylang. I think ylang ylang says you've kind of got it. You're strong. You can do this. And like you say, you're beautiful. It's got that kind of presence about it. I think ylang ylang.
I love that. And you can use that for anxiety or depression. For depression, I'm going to go simple and I'm going to put three oils together. I'm going to challenge you and everybody watching to use these three oils. Oh, goodness. No, yes. Okay. I'm going to stick to these three. I thought maybe I was going to add a fourth one and I'm just going to do these three. I decided just to do these blends off the cuff with you. Peppermint, because peppermint can lift you up, it opens your eyes. And so when you're in a depression, sometimes you just can't see your way out. The second oil, I was going to do lemon, but I felt that we needed something a little bit stronger. So lemongrass. It's a grass, and you think of the grass, it's really strong, and the blades can be flexible. They can move, but they're very rooted and grounded because whenever you run your hands through the blades of the grass, it feels like it's cutting you. What that tells you is it has a protective nature. So what this is allowing you to do is to see your way out of it while staying protected. And then the third oil, I'm going to go way out west here, is sweet basil, because basil is very good to activate your cognition. Sometimes you have to think your way out. And what I love about these three is this is really head, heart, and gut. Basil being the head, lemongrass being the heart, peppermint being the gut. These have to be in alignment so you can think your way out of it, you can feel your way out of it, you can see your way out of it. And that is why I wanted to choose these three for the depression. And they really can hold their own. They're very strong on their own. So I'm just going to do equal parts, 2 drops of each, 3 drops of each, depending on if you're making up a nasal atomizer or if you're making up a roll on or a spray. Do them in equal parts: peppermint, lemongrass, and sweet basil. Sharon, what blend for depression?
I love that. I love that you use sweet basil. I just been finishing out of my garden the actual sweet basil and putting it in my dinner at night. It's just really nice when you crush it up together. So maybe I've been drawn to sweet basil recently because I don't really use it much as an essential oil, and I should. I really like the aroma. So yeah, for depression, I'm going to do it off the cuff too, but thinking about what we've been talking about, I'm going to put juniper in mine. I have a little kind of story. I'll share it with you, but I don't want to tell you the full story yet. I was gathering juniper this morning for our podcast, and yeah, I got a really profound message from juniper as I was gathering from the tree. I'm kind of struggling with a decision at the moment, and I got a really strong message from juniper. So I feel like juniper is really kind of grounding for me at the moment. So definitely putting juniper in there. Lemon, I'm going to put lemon in because it's just so bright and cheerful. And I just, lemon is really a good one, I think, for depression. And frankincense, again, for the grounding. It's grounding, but I think it also kind of gets you on track. Same with juniper. It can be grounding, but it's also kind of lifts you up. It's all like bringing you outside, outdoors. So those three I would use. As for the different parts, we, I would put more lemon in for depression. Don't want to overdo it, but I feel like you need to lift that up. So if I was putting it in, let's see, if I was putting it in a personal inhaler, I'm going to break it down with that lemon. I would probably go with maybe it's about 7 drops. Juniper scents, frankincense, I would maybe do 4 drops. I'm doing this intuitively here. I've been studying with Jennifer too long. So what's that? Oh, my maths is 11. So we've got 7 of lemon, 4 of frankincense, and yeah, maybe it's about 5 of juniper. That's what I would kind of pull together there. So yeah, that would be my blend.
Feels great. Very grounding, but opening, grounding and connected to see your way out. I love, love, love that. Wow, we have talked quite a bit of essential oils, hydrosols, herbals, whether it's in an herbal tea,
Mhm.
fresh herbs that you're putting together. I love the smelling salts and the nasal atomizers as well. I know most people do the cotton, but a different way that you can use those is having that salt in there, which I think is highly beneficial. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and
Yeah.
spending this time with us talking about anxiety, depression. We would love to hear your comments. We would love to hear your feedback. Is there anything that we talk about that you're like, I'm still curious, or I have a question about? Put it in the comments, let us know, and we read those, we get back to you. We want to help you. We want to be a guiding light for you to help you during this time. And Sharon, what are we going to be talking about on our next episode?
Our next episode is a little bit of an expansion on this one. We are going to be talking about loneliness and grief. So, diving a little bit more into that and essential oils that can help with that. So, we're probably going to be talking more about some citrus oils and tree oils, but also probably some other different things as well that can help you with that. So, we look forward to seeing you next time.
Take care. We'll see you next time.
Wow, what an incredible and inspiring Aroma Paths podcast episode. Thank you for joining us. We are your Scentcasters Sharon Falsetto Chapman and Jennifer Pressimone. Please like this episode and subscribe to our channel to follow us on more Aroma Paths adventures.